Hello, I'm David, and a very warm welcome to today's edition of People and Politics. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to the show. I'd be very grateful indeed. Joining me today is someone who's been around Westminster a relatively short period of time, but you could argue easily that he has had a very big impact. It certainly has on me. Stephen Flynn is the leader of the SNP group at Westminster, and come the general election in 6 months' time or 9 months, whatever it's going to be, he could find himself in a really powerful position indeed. I really look forward today to talking to my guest, Stephen Flynn. Welcome to People and Politics. Stephen Flynn, thank you so much for your time and thanks for coming on the show.
I'm delighted to be here, David. Delighted to be here.
And thank you. It's Wednesday afternoon, and I think it's fair to say this time a week ago, you weren't very happy. In fact, you were really raging when you stood up and demanded Wednesday Hoyle back to the chamber. Were you satisfied with the way that went? And how
I don't think so, David, if I'm honest. I mean, so obviously we got word about, I can't remember what time it was, probably would have been just after what, quarter to one it should have been, but it ended up being about 45 minutes later or so, just because there was a wee bit of filibustering going on in the chamber, which everyone knows about now. So I was around about that time that we'd found out that the Speaker had obviously changed the rules following a chat that he'd had with Sir Keir behind the chair when nobody else was there to see it.
Yeah.
And, I was a bit disappointed at that time, but I did spend the afternoon touring TV studios and radio shows just to say that, we were quite happy to vote for Labour's amendment. I was glad that they'd got themselves into a position where they now agreed with us on a ceasefire. And, what I was expecting to happen was there'd be a vote on that, and then there'd be a vote on our one. And I was okay with that. And then in the chamber, it obviously transpired because of the changes the Speaker had made that we were now no longer going to get a vote. And I find that profoundly unfair.
Yeah.
We only get 3 shots a year to bring something to the Commons. We'd managed to in my view, change Labour's position, but we still had our own position that we wanted to vote on, and that didn't get to happen. So yeah, I was a little bit frustrated at that, and I was even probably more frustrated on Monday when we were told by the Speaker that the promise he'd made to us he wasn't going to keep, which was that we'd essentially get another shot this week. So yeah, it was it's been an interesting week or so. Not what I expected to happen, but I'm glad that we've been able to bring the situation in Gaza to the forefront of politics in Westminster, and we've been doing this for months now. I just hope we can get to a situation where the violence can stop.
Yeah, you've done really well to bring it to the Commons repeatedly since October, and I said it's very hard to understand because would you agree that everybody wants an immediate and and once and for all ceasefire, and they don't want the violence to start again? Everybody wants that. But since again, people have got different views of how they get there.
I don't think you're far away from probably where a lot of people are at, David. And I think this is maybe one of the things that frustrates the public is that, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of what separates the parties on this is just a few words here and there. But ultimately, words matter because they define a party's politics and a party's values. And we've been very clear for many months now, obviously since we saw the scale of the Israeli government's response to the abhorrent attacks on the 7th of October, that it was collective punishment of the Palestinian people and it needed to stop.
Yeah.
Now, for some, the use of the term collective punishment is something they're uncomfortable with. But I don't know how else you describe people not having access to food and water and medicine and electricity and all of these things. So it's and in my mind, it's for other politicians to defend their positions. I'm just confident in defending mine, and when last week, when we'd managed to get the Labour Party to shift its position a wee bit, I'd said very publicly, I'll vote for their amendment, and I hope that they'll vote for our motion as well, because that was the cross-party working I was trying to achieve. I'd written to Sir Keir the week before asking for a meeting, and never did get a response, by the way. But that that's politics sometimes. I don't think it serves any of us any any good when that happens. Because we do need to try and work together. I tried that at the start of this week as well. When I wrote to all the party leaders, thinking that we were going to get a debate that was promised to us by the speaker. But yeah, but that debate never happened. So some of those meetings never happened.
No, and I'm very conscious that we still don't know what was said between Sakira and Sir Wednesday last Monday, and we might never know. But
I could probably take a wee guess.
yeah,
But I'm sure they would argue differently.
okay, yeah. So, so when we come back to the sort of gather race, I wanted to take you back to Dundee
Okay.
because that's where you grew up, and that's a city that I have huge affection for, and as people, I don't know if you know, I did my degree in Bell Street Tech, as it
Oh,
was,
class. Yeah,
as
yeah.
it was in these days when I went there. It was still Dundee Institute of Technology, and I was in about third year, and it opened its doors to get numbers up, and it became Abertay University, and
Yeah, yeah.
so I have huge. I have really good memories in Dundee, and of course that's where you're from, and that's where you went to school. Did you have a good experience at school?
Yeah, so my like I was obviously born in Dundee, and my folks the house they were living in, or the flat they were living in when I was born was in Stobie in Dundee, and then we moved up to Brecon, and then we moved back to Whitfield in Dundee, and then we moved back to Brecon, and then we moved back to Dundee a few years later. So we were on a wee bit of a yo-yo. So I went to all the schools in Brecon, I went to a primary school in Dundee, and then ended up finishing at Harris Academy, just on the Perth Road in Dundee. And I did enjoy growing up. I had a great time. Always had a lot of good mates, whether that was in Dundee or in Brecon. I had the unfortunate privilege when I was 13, 14, of developing a hip condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, which vascular necrosis, or Perthes disease as they call it when you're a kid, which meant that when I got that, I was because I was 13, 14, I missed a fair amount of schooling. And it wasn't easy to go back to school when you're on crutches, and all the rest of it because of the stigma. And I wasn't able to do the things that I enjoy, which was kicking a football and causing a wee bit of trouble. So yeah, it was a challenging time. The good thing is, though, had a lot of support from my family. I had a lot of support from my close friends, and there was some teachers at the time who went above and beyond to make sure that I still got an education, even though I wasn't in school very much. So yeah, it's something that was very formative for me, and I'd probably hear from a few folk. I know that many of the characteristics I now display are probably because of the circumstances that impacted me with that disability when I was a teenager.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm sure I read or I heard that that you were laid up in bed for a long time. So presumably you must have experienced disability for a few years, and as you just alluded to, that must have shaped your growing up and shaped your character. And what do you think that experience of disability did for you at that time?
Yeah, so I ended up so I spent a lot of time in and out of hospital. I missed most of my third year at school. I um, yeah, I missed a lot of school, and even when I was going through my hires and that, I wasn't in school quite a lot because I had quite a painful experience. And I guess it got to the point towards the end of my schooling that I needed to decide what I wanted to do because I'd by that point reluctantly accepted the fact that I wasn't going to play for Dundee United, so I needed to do something else. So I just started reading books, and that's probably the most important decision that I've made personally. And reading books, making sure that I had a better understanding of the world and how it worked. And I guess what came with being physically disabled for what ended up being 18 years before I got my hip replaced was that I guess I developed a level of fortitude that I might not have had. And you marry that with the fact that I took the opportunity to then focus on my education. When you put those two things together, you probably get a wee bit of an argumentative politician on the other side. So,
Um,
no, it was a huge part of my life. I'm only 35, so I spent, as it still stands, more than half of my life physically disabled. And there's not many people who, and this is what I'm very grateful for, David, there's not many people who get to have the experience that I've had and effectively be fixed. And I have been fixed, and I'm very grateful for that. It's allowed me to enjoy my kids growing up in a way that I otherwise wouldn't. And it was an interesting moment because I met my wife obviously when I was at uni, and she knew me with crutches my the entire time we were together. So hers it was funny because when I say it's funny, but because I always walked with a crutch in my right hand, we always held hands with our left hand. And when I'd finally got my hip replaced and I was able to ditch the crutches after I'd learned, because I had to learn how to walk again. I had no muscle in my leg and all the rest of it, a lot of physio, and yeah, I had to teach myself how to walk. And we finally got to hold hands with our right hand, my right hand, and it felt bizarre. So we just went back to
so you
so
just
yeah.
walk back again
Yeah,
to
so
the
there's those little things that are quite important, quite memorable. But I was just I'm just always conscious of the fact that I've managed to be fixed with this metal hip for the next 15, 20 years or whatever it is. Not everyone gets that opportunity, and that's why those of us who are in roles like me, we need to make sure that we do our bit to try and improve the lives of everyone.
yeah. I suppose it puts you in a very unique um, position because there's a lot of people in life, unfortunately, develop disability as they get older, and that there's very society fewer who start off with a disability and get better or this and I was wondering whether you still identify as a disabled person instead of that, because presumably in your teens that would have been part of your identity. And I'm wondering if it's part of your identity now.
So so I don't how will I word this? I didn't actually talk about being disabled until I wasn't disabled. I found it quite a hard thing for me um, to talk about. I tried to do everything that everyone else did. Goodness me, I would go and get leaflets for the SNP and go and deliver them up tower blocks and all the rest of it. And I'd walk myself into the ground and all the rest of it. I'd go on holiday and do that thing that we all do where you decide that you want to go somewhere and instead of just getting on a bus or something, you choose to walk. I would try and just do everything that I possibly could do to not think of myself as being disabled. And it was probably when I had my hip replaced and I was able to learn to walk again after a couple of months that I probably reflected more upon the fact that I maybe should have spoken more about what was wrong with me and the impact that it's had on my life, both negative but also really positive. And it's almost been a bit of a it's almost been a bit of a moment for me to then be able to realize that I'm in a bit of a unique position and I can talk about what it's like to be physically disabled. And I need to just make sure that I use that voice for others now, David. And now I wouldn't regard myself as disabled. I know that I was disabled, and I can say
Yeah.
that now. What I do know I am is an absolute irritant for everyone at an airport. It's, I set the alarms off.
Oh yeah, it must
uh,
be great for
yeah,
airport security. Must be
yeah,
a joy.
I know. So it's been a tough ride at certain points, but I'm just always conscious of how fortunate I am to be in a better position. And I know that at some point I'm going to have to get this bit of metal taken out my leg, and I'm going to have to get a new bit of metal put in, and I'll deal with that when that happens.
Yeah,
But the way the NHS treated me, and I'm sure will treat me in the future, will mean that I don't have a lot to worry about in
yeah,
that regard, which is a good thing.
good. We're very lucky. I, yeah, I can, as you were talking there, I completely identify with it. You know, I think as a disabled person, you overcompensate to show how able you are. Particularly when I was in Dundee and, about way that I used to really push myself to climb on roads or to cycle to the length of Scotland, I've cycled the Hebrides and stuff, and I'm really used to push almost too hard. But it's just to like overcompensate. It's to show people that you're just able. And but that takes its wear and I suppose that takes its wear and tear as well, and that
Yeah.
can be quite exhausting. And but I suppose I was asking what do you identify now as disabled. And then because you're not in frontline politics and media, you can count on the one hand the number of representation of disabled people. It's like this big, sort of cohort in society that that they say accounts for about 20% of society. But disability, in my view, I don't view, it still remains the most underrepresented group in media and politics. And I'm wondering how that could be addressed and
Yeah.
how that could be changed.
Yeah, and you're right. It's 1 in 5 folk have a disability, whether that's physical or otherwise, and we do have a massive underrepresentation. When I first got elected to the House of Commons, I I was a wee bit later than everyone else coming down because my wife and I had our first child. But when I was going into the chamber, I was really conscious of the fact that I was walking in with a crutch. And I used to walk and try and hide it so that, like folk didn't see it or think that you were, I had a pretty good technique, by the way. It was just hidden in the right hand side.
Uh,
Um, I mastered it over the years, but it was I was conscious of that because you do feel like an outsider and you worry that someone's going to make a judgment on you as a result of what they see rather than who you are and what you're going to say and what you're going to do and what you think and what you believe. So I do understand that stigma, and having that lived experience, I can hopefully use that to try and speak up for others. I am conscious that there's some brilliant people in Parliament who do have very noticeable physical disabilities. Indeed, one of my predecessors in Aberdeen South was Dame Anne Begg, who
Yeah,
and the work that Anne has done over the years, and indeed still does, I believe, in order to promote to promote proper equity for people with disabilities is hugely important. So well, whilst I know I'm not disabled now, I can go and play five-a-side football if I want to, or go for a little jog, and I know I can do that. I know that's going to wear and tear on my leg, right enough, but I know that I can do that, and others can't. But that lived experience is something that I can bring to the conversation. And if there's an opportunity to do that, David, I'll always try and do that. Because it does, if I was to go and chap the doors of all the MPs right now, probably none of them would even, apart from the ones who've known me for a long time, would realize that I was even disabled. And that gives me a platform to be able to speak for other people as well.
yeah, that's great, and that's a vibe because you know when elections and budgets or often statements come around, you know, disability and welfare are quite often talked about them. So there's so little people to advocate on our behalf, and but um but yeah,
David, I'm gonna jump in because on this one I actually want to say well done to you and your podcast because you know you're you're doing something to try and make sure that everyone knows that people can do these things, and I think that's quite inspiring. So well done to you. You can edit that bit out if you want, by the way, but
yeah,
I do think it's
no.
I do think it's very inspiring, and it's a lesson to all of us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate, you know, I started the podcast because you know, I spend a lot of my time sort of listening to political and podcasts and debate, and I just wanted a bit of that. And the idea was is to create a platform from different voices.
Yeah.
And so far, it's my voice, but, but people don't seem to mind so far. But no, I'm grateful. And I'm going to stick at it, and
You're quite right as well.
I enjoyed doing it. And so I suppose moving on, you know, that, as you said, you're 30, you're 35, and a bit later this year, you know, you could be in a phenomenally powerful position, depending on when Richie calls the election and what happened. I think uh, what's your preferred outcome? You know, yeah. What should happen? Because okay, the SNP are not going to be the biggest party. So what's your preferred outcome?
So this won't surprise you, given I'm a kid from Dundee. I'm quite keen to see the Tories out of government, and I would that would please me no end. So and I think that's going to happen. I think the tide is emphatically coming for them, and the Labour Party will form a government. Um, from my perspective, I want to see the SNP have as most a successful election as we possibly can to win as many seats as we possibly can, not just the ones we hold, but some of the others in Scotland. And I think that we can do that. We've had a tough time the last 12 months or so. But you know, in elections, I often think that it's all to play for, and you know, it is all to play for. And I'm very keen to get going and make sure that we can be successful. If we were able to be in a position where we could use our numbers to influence a UK government, I would be really pleased with that. You know, we've shown over the course of the last, and this probably takes us back to where we started. We've shown over the course of the last couple of weeks, maybe even longer, the importance of us being down in Westminster because of the power we've been able to exert to change, to highlight an issue, firstly, but also to change the Labour Party policy in relation to an issue because of our pressure, but also that public pressure that's been there. We provided the parliamentary pressure that's enabled that to happen. And if we were in a position where we could influence a UK government to do some of the things that we would like to see happen, I would see that as a good outcome. And that that starts firstly with the Conservatives losing, but also starts with the SNP winning. And that's the two things that I would like to see happen in the Scottish context. And hopefully, and I'm going to be very party political here. Hopefully, we can get to that point where the SNP's role in Westminster, coupled with parliamentary arithmetic, allows the people of Scotland to be able to decide their own future. And that's something I believe very strongly in, which will come as no surprise to you or indeed anyone else. But that would be quite a satisfying outcome.
Yeah. Isn't it? Isn't it a bit that I keep wondering that if the SNP are successful in Scotland again, which they could well be, and in some way that they might bend the becoming a Labour government. Because for Labour to form a government, they need the seats in Scotland. So if the SNP are successful again in Scotland, there's more chance of us getting another Conservative government because Labour don't have enough seats. Do you see what?
Yeah, no, no, I see where
Um,
I see where
yeah.
you're coming from. But there's well in excess of 600 MPs, and there's only 57 from Scotland.
Yeah.
There's less MPs that come from Scotland than there is for London.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so
That's
if Labour win big in England, and this is just basic numbers, if Labour win big in England, then Scotland isn't necessarily required in the way that people think it does. But that's where people in Scotland just need to determine what it is that they want, and who do they want to send down the road to be their voice in Westminster? Do they want to send the SNP, and we will always be pretty unashamed about standing up for Scotland. It's our USP. It's what we're here to do. Or do they want to send MPs down for a different party? And that's ultimately what the general election is going to be fought on. Who do they want to be Scotland's voice, and who can deliver them the best opportunity to ensure that Scotland's voice is heard in London? Because I can assure you, because I'm here firsthand, that ensuring Scotland's voice is heard in Westminster is no mean feat, and I'm sure that colleagues from Wales and from Northern Ireland would say the same thing.
Yeah, sure. And of course, if you do get into, uh, if you do get to rank or power or anywhere near, you don't need to be a pundit to work out that your number one demand will be another referendum, or or at least a power to hold one. And how do you think that will go down with Sakir?
Yeah, no, it would be the power to hold one, because I think that power should rest in Holyrood, and I think the lessons of the last 10 years have been that power devolved is very much power retained, and the power over our own future, I don't think should rest in Westminster. I think it should be for Scotland's politicians in Holyrood to be able to determine what happens based upon what the electorate in Scotland wants to happen. That's probably the biggest lesson that we've had over the course of the last 10 years. I can't obviously speak for Keir in terms of what his views are going to be on situations that could or couldn't happen.
Yeah,
But what I would say with complete conviction is I know what I believe in, uh,
yeah.
and I'll continue to knock on the door to make that possible, because that's what people send me here to do, to speak up for them locally up in Aberdeen, and then also for Scotland as a whole through my role as the group leader.
If 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 you transfer the power to hold the referendum back to Holyrood, does that mean that the next time the SNP are a few votes ahead in the polls, or are we ahead, they can have a quick referendum, win it, and that's the end of the matter? Uh, uh, because that, because that, I feel that that's if he does have power to hold it, that's what would happen.
Yeah, yeah, and that would be for the public to decide what happens because it would be for the public in Scotland to say whether they want a Scottish Parliament that's empowered to do that, to hold that referendum or otherwise, and I think that's quite an important thing. It's for the people of Scotland to determine what happens with their future. I want them to go down a certain path, and I'm very keen to see Scotland become an independent nation. But it's for the people of Scotland to determine the when of that happens. And from my perspective, hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But I would like that power to be in Edinburgh, and I would like the people of Scotland to be able to exercise their views. And that's ever in a negotiation. That's what we would be negotiating on, because it's hugely important.
Whatever happens, at the moment, Scotland feels like it feels like a very divided country, Stephen. You're either pro it or you're against it. You're a no or a yes. You either fly the soft tire or the Union Jack, and it feels like a very deeply divided nation at the moment. And I wonder if you got that sense, and I wonder what it'll take to heal that.
I
I,
think that responsibility falls on I think that falls on all of our shoulders because whether whether you believe in the union or whether you believe in Scottish independence, it's for all of us. All of us in Scotland will either live in the union, or we'll live in an independent Scotland, and we'll only be as successful as the sum of our parts, and that's going to require people working together. That's going to require people doing things in order to grow our economy and make sure that people have access to public services that they deserve, and that's all going to be based upon good faith and the fact that we want Scotland to be better. Now, for the vast majority of my political opponents, I've no doubt that they want Scotland to be a better nation, to do things better for the people who live in Scotland. We just have a different view on how we achieve that.
yeah.
And I'm grown up and realistic to accept that that's the case. But what we need to make sure happens is, and I can only say this in good faith, is if we do secure our independence, we need to make sure that we build it not just on our hopes and aspirations, but the hopes and aspirations of everyone.
Yeah, sure. And obviously you hope that we do secure independence, but if we do have another referendum and people decide again to stay in the United Kingdom, will that be the end of the matter, or will the
I am very confident that when we have a vote again, David, that the people of Scotland will vote for independence, and so this question will never need to be addressed. Ever the politician, I'm afraid.
yeah, that's a good answer. Good answer. Well, I suppose it only time will tell. But uh, but Emerson, thank you so much for
No,
spending your time on to
no,
me. Yeah, I'm really enjoying doing my podcast, and yeah, I hope it goes a tiny bit to, I suppose, making the platform politics more accessible to everybody.
absolutely. And you keep at it, okay? And as I said earlier, I think what you're doing is very inspiring. And please keep at it, and hopefully others follow suit as well. Okay.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Right. Good to see you.
Good to hear.
Bye
Right.
bye, man. Bye bye.
Bye.